Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Licensing and Environmental Health Committee. My name is Richard Udall. I'm the chair of this committee, and I have to read a statement for everybody before we commence. Welcome to today's meeting. This is a public meeting, and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographic work, making an audio recording, and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded, and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is on the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Mr. Pugh, have we got any substitutes?
Yes, we do, Chair. Jessie Jagger is here for Sarah Murray. Elaine Wilmore is here for Robin Norfolk.
Thank you, and welcome to you both. Any declarations of interest? No, nobody's interested. Good. Any public representation? No. Thank you very much. We move to the minutes of the previous meeting. Is it your wish they be signed as a truish record? Thank you very much. Moving swiftly on then to agenda item 5, primate keeper licensing. Niall, I think this is you. You're not a block primate. You're.
There we go, that's better. So yes, this report is to inform members of the update in legislation and the responsibility that's coming to the Council in relation to the licensing of primates. It's the Animal Welfare Primates Licensing England Regulations 2024. They were made in March last year and they take effect on the 6th of April. So the Council needs to be in a position to start accepting applications should somebody wish to keep a primate within Worcester. The report itself goes into the background. I'm not going to sort of go in. There's a lot of information in the report. I'm hoping you all had the opportunity to read it. But one thing of note, at the moment, primates are regulated by way of dangerous wild animal licences, and Worcester doesn't issue any dangerous wild animal licences to any person who has a primate. They haven't in the whole time that I've worked in licensing. Now, the RSPCA estimate that there are 5,000 primates in personal ownership in the UK. So it may be that we just haven't got that information to hand. I think somewhere along the line there are 220 dangerous wild animal licences issued to people with primates in the country. So there are a lot of animals that are being kept either illegally or in ignorance that a licence is required. This hopefully, with the publication and some communication, will sort of raise people's awareness of the need to have a licence for that particular animal. The RSPCA, there was a lot of lobbying when it came to primates, and certainly they are difficult animals to keep because of their complexities around their needs and their social needs and their feeding needs. So they have separated it away from dangerous wild animals and put legislation in place. Now, we're in a position, as I say, hopefully following this committee, we've put forward fees that the Council can charge. We will be in a position to have application forms. There's a holding page that's been put forward for the website. So that anybody who wishes to apply for a licence can. So we'll certainly meet our legal responsibilities. What we're here tonight is to consider certainly the information in the report and then refer the fees on to the relevant committee for approval in the Council's fees and charges. Anything else in there that you need to know? Possibly not. I'll probably leave it there. I'll probably leave it there. I mean, the one thing that I will mention is that guidance hasn't been published yet by DEFRA, and the guidance is where the devil in the detail. You know, we won't know how we are going to administer this system until the guidance has been published. But licences won't be issued until 2026. So people can make applications, but we won't be in a position to actually issue them until the guidance has been published. And we are fully aware of the council's responsibilities in relation to inspections, welfare, and they are very detailed. We've based it on the animal activity licences, which we are well versed with, which came in 2018, and officers are very well versed in inspections of premises where animals are involved. So we are making assumptions that it will be along those lines, but as soon as information is available, it will be brought back to this committee as an information paper to inform you of the updates. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Okay, can you just give some clarification about the resolution to Policy and Resources Committee, because this would normally go to council, would it not? But we're not having a council in time for adoption. Is that just for members' clarification?
Chair, because of the because fees and charges have been set for the forthcoming year, then committee has delegation where we believe that the income resulting from a fee is less than £10,000 per annum. So because it's quite likely that, well, it's highly likely that we aren't going to generate £10,000 in income, as you see from the fees in front of you, it does not need to go to council.
Karen?
Thank you, Chair. Will the primates be identified in any way so that we'll know that you're actually dealing with the one that's licensed? I don't know if, I mean, Pets, I had my horse freeze branded, obviously not suggesting that, but will there be some form of microchipping or anything like that so that we know that, it's actually that animal, it hasn't been replaced with something that's similar from a dubious source?
That is a very good question. And unfortunately, without the guidance, I'm unable to answer it. We would like to think, like dogs and cats, there is a microchipping scheme in place so that we know exactly that. I mean, is the animal being presented to us the correct animal? Is it being licensed? We'd also like to know where it came from, you know, so there isn't an illegal marketing the sale of primates. But yeah, we'll probably wait until the guidance is published before we can sort of answer those sort of details and send the report back to committee.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of immediate questions in terms of the practicality of this. So what incentive is there for somebody to apply for a licence? That's the first question. How do we make sure people apply for a licence if they've got a primate? So that's the second question. And then the third question will be obviously around suitability of the person applying to be able to hold a primate in the essentially a fit and proper test to hold animals. So those three questions, and the fourth question is obviously how do you enforce the policy? I know a lot of the guidance is coming out. Are we jumping the gun before the guidance is in place before we set the policy? Thank you.
A lot of questions there for you.
Yes, there is. I mean, in relation to policy, there isn't a proposal to introduce a policy as such, simply because the animal welfare regulations, if it is anticipated they're going to be very similar, are very, very prescriptive. So it tells us what's required. We have the primary legislation, so it will become, well, from the 6th of April, it will become an offence to own one of these animals without a licence, and the sanctions are in the legislation. The guidance when published will be very prescriptive of exactly who can and can't. There are details in the report, you know, can't be over 18, can't have had previous, can't be under 18. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? So they can't, so a person applying for a licence can't be under 18, they can't have had a previous, can't have been prosecuted for a previous offence, for example. But it really is, it's the guidance that's going to lead us on all of those sort of questions, and the fit and proper test is a good one. You know, who can, you know, can somebody in a house, in a cage? The answer is going to be no. There will be certain criteria that they will need to meet to be able to meet the animal's needs, and they will also need to be an appropriate person, you know, to actually own one of these animals, because it's a big responsibility. With regards to identifying them, yes, I think publication and sort of communication is going to be key. You will find that if somebody has a primate, people will know, neighbours will know, and they will report them. It happens at the moment with animal licensing, with dog breeding, with dog boarding. All of those sort of things are reported through to us very frequently. So the expectation is that, yes, information will come to light. The RSPCA, I'm guessing, will hold some of this information, and local vets. certainly those animals will need to be treated, and there may be some pressure on vets to actually start sharing information with the local authority. But again, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the answers. It is really effectively, I mean, not arguing with the premise of the policy, with the report at all. It is the practicality of executing it in terms of that, and absolutely animal safety is a massive issue for us and in terms of responsibility. Thank you.
I totally agree. Enforcement is going to be the biggest issue for us here, and making people aware of the need of the changes in the legislation. We'll come back to that in a second. Jill, next.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering about the definition of where does the line sit between a primate and a dangerous animal? Because something like a gorilla is a primate, but I understand that they would be classed as a dangerous animal and remain in that category. Are there grey areas there? I mean, how would you deal with an orangutan? And I don't know.
No, the dangerous wild animal list is very prescriptive. And again, the guidance is key, because at the moment we are under the impression that you will need both licenses if it falls into the DWA category. So it's, again, if you have a monkey or an ape, they are clearly dangerous wild animals, and they would need further assessment and possibly another license. And again, if you then want to show them off to members of the public, would you then need a zoo license? And again, these are questions that haven't been answered yet, and we're still waiting for the guidance to direct us. But the assumption at the moment is you would need both types of licenses for any animal that currently sits on the DWA license list.
Thank you. Just one more quick one. Is there going to be, do you envisage there'll be any sort of limit on the numbers of these animals that could be kept by one individual?
It would come down to their facilities. So if somebody, for example, in Worcester, it's quite built up, lots of houses. But in Worcestershire generally, there are farms, there are places where you could possibly keep a family of primates, because they could meet the natural needs of the animal. And that's what it's all about. It's meeting the needs of the animal. You know, it's their social needs and their environmental needs. So providing you meet those needs, then a license can be granted. If you can't, then that will be one of the criteria, certainly in the guidance for refusal.
And indeed, one of the conditions will be on some of the primates, as I understand it, that you will have to have more than one in order for them to meet their social needs. So keeping one monkey in a cage will not be acceptable. So they need to have a social contact with other monkeys. I think the next person was Hannah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wondered if there is currently expertise to be able to do these inspections within WRS, or whether you'd need to buy that in. And if so, for the inspections, does £182 cover the costs of buying someone in? Thank you.
With this inspection, yes, there will be a need for officers to be trained. We're guessing that there will be available training through the relevant channels. But we're not specialists. So when it comes to other animal licensing, we're not specialists, but we are trained so that we can carry out the inspection. With this, there will be a need for a vet. Certainly, my guess is on the first inspection, as there is with dog breeders and kenneling. There is a need for a professional to come out and assess the welfare of the animals as well as the officers. So there will always be that requirement for dual visits, and certainly the veterinary experts who are trained in animal care, and then the licensing officers who are trained in the regulations to be able to apply them to the person who's applying the license.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, and apologies, you may have mentioned this and I might have missed it, but do you know when the guidance will be available? Okay, so that's quite disappointing, isn't it?
Sorry, not yet, no. I mean, it's with DEFRA. The legislation has been put in place, so we're just sitting waiting, really.
But meanwhile, being asked to deliver this...
Yeah, I mean, the date is very prescriptive, you know, from the 6th of April, we need to be in a position to accept licences. I'm aware that other local district councils aren't. You know, so when an application lands, they will need to consider what they do with it.
Well, that's sort of coming on to my second question. Do you have any idea at this stage how many of these applications you're likely to receive in the area?
I would guess from the information that we've got at the moment, very few. So at the moment, as I say, if there was a primate, certainly that sat on the DWA list, it should have a dangerous wild animal list. It should have a dangerous wild animal licence, and we we issue those licenses, so we should be aware of it. We haven't got any information at the moment to say how many there are, certainly in the Worcestershire area. I know of one or two, but not in the Worcester City district.
Okay, anybody else got any questions? Councillor Sol-
Yeah, may I ask if the fees are consistent throughout the Worcestershire licensing authorities?
Yes, it is. The same report has been presented to all district councils, and it is WRS that will be administering the licensing system. So we'll have our trained officers. The same process is being proposed, along with the same fees, because it is exactly the same process that's been put forward to the district councils.
Unless it's, oh, Councillor Riaz.
Yeah, just one quick one. How long are these licenses? Is it a yearly license fee, or is it for a 3?
2 years.
I just wondered, has any thought been given to what happens if a licence is refused? What happens to the animal itself? So it's a no-hoper. They can't keep it. What happens then?
Well, in reality, they should be applying for a licence before they acquire the animal. So if they have the animal, then it may be, and this is where the regulations, the guidance will come in on where the council goes. Now, we have been in this position previously for other types of animals, exotic animals such as snakes, and there are specialist animal companies that will take them and put them in their natural habitat and look after them. So we would expect that will be the same for primates. We have contacts, certainly through DEFRA, of these animal charities that look after animals when they're seized or taken into possession. But at this moment in time, we're not sure whether the council will be seizing animals or just certainly directing them. Most individuals will offer up the animal because they haven't got a licence and they will face prosecution. So it's one or the other.
Karen?
Thank you, Chair. I think you just said that the licence will be for 2 years, but in 3.30 it says 3.
I'm confusing with pavement licences, I apologise. I've been carrying out a lot of work today on pavement licences and 2 sprang to mind. Yes, it's P. Both begin with P, very simple. So yeah, 3 years, sorry.
Okay. You have the recommendation in front of you to pass this to Policy and Resources, but before we do so, I think it's worth saying and making it absolutely clear that I can't understand why anybody would want to have a wild animal as a pet, and I think that the idea is pretty despicable. But if you do have one out there in Worcester, it should be known that we are waiting for you to apply for a licence. We expect you to do so, and if you don't, we will find you, because you will require a licence in order to keep that animal. All those in favour of the recommendation? We all happy, business. And we move on to the review of taxi rank provision. I've been saying that wrong all afternoon. Over to you, Niall.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is a review of Worcester City's taxi rank provision. A bit of background to this report. Officers have been asked to look at the location and position and number of taxi ranks in the city. And this has been discussed at taxi forums with the taxi trade and licence holders themselves. Worcester City is very interesting because we are quite restricted on the layout. We can't sort of magic up new locations and roads. It is with the main arterial route going straight through the city very difficult. But we have managed to identify 2 possible locations to start the conversation. One of them was put forward by the taxi trade themselves. They are very keen for a taxi rank in the Lowesmore area. Now, the Lowesmore area itself, whilst it's always had hospitality premises such as pubs, it's developed certainly over the last few years and is now very busy. Now, the taxi trade see that there is lots of potential for passengers in that area and have therefore put forward a proposal to the Taxi Association, the Taxi Association to the Taxi Forum for officers to investigate the feasibility of putting a rank in that location. So that is why we're considering that one. We've also sat and discussed another location, which is to the rear of the Guildhall, which is Copenhagen Street. Again, the area has changed. It's turned into a fairly busy nighttime economy area with numerous hospitality premises, pubs, bars, and other areas, and is a haven, or certainly a magnet for members of the public. And so there is a possibility that it may be a suitable location again for the formalisation of a rank to ferry those passengers out of the city when the time required. Now, the report itself gives information of the current rank locations and the number of ranks that the city has. Some of them are full-time, some of them are part-time, some of them are evening only. So the report itself gives all of those details. What the report is actually asking is really for us to start the work on liaising with the Highways Authority to see whether the two proposals are feasible. It may be that they're not. I have attempted to sort of engage with them initially just to start that conversation, so I'm still waiting for them to come back to me. Should they be feasible, then we'll be looking to the next steps. Before we do anything, obviously this committee will be consulted on the outcome. There is another proposal in there at the moment, and part of the review identified that there are actually taxi ranks that are no longer used by the taxi trade. One of them is in Queen Street, a fairly sizable rank, probably holds about 8 vehicles, I think it is, because it's in the wrong location. There isn't really any passing trade. People don't go to Queen Street and look for taxis. They come into the city centre. So it's identifying sort of suitable areas. So certainly those conversations with the licence holders themselves and their representatives have been fairly positive, and they wouldn't object to those ranks being removed and offered up for alternative parking. But again, that isn't for this committee to consider. This committee is here to consider the taxi ranks only. So any other proposals or any ideas that you may have around what that could be used for isn't really for discussion in this committee, is it? So we will be looking 2 proposals, one to carry out work with 2 new taxi ranks, one in Lowesmoor, one in Copenhagen Street, and then the other one is to actually formally remove them, because there is signage up at the moment. There is road markings that would need to be changed to offer those back up. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any in relation to this report, Chair, and look to the recommendation.
Yeah, as Niall has said, this is just the start of the process, not the end, and there's still a long way to go before we actually come to formal agreement or otherwise. And lots of consultation exercises will have to take place, not only with the trade, but with the public as well, including those residents who may live adjacent to or by potential taxi ranks. I would ask members to try and keep their comments, if possible, to the issue of taxi ranks and not expand it to other issues. I know how tempting it is, because we've got lots of issues regarding parking in the city centre, but we are, as a licensing committee, only interested in taxi ranks. Councillor Scott.
Welcome the review that you do, so thanks for that. And I can see exactly the point you're making. Bus, for example.
Could you put your microphone on, please?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I have to mind to say. The butts must have been there because of a nightclub which no longer exists. What comes with a taxi rank presumably comes a bit more enforcement, so that the whatever wardening or control mechanisms that we bring at night, there will be more supervision than exists at present, which I think will be a bit of benefit to some of these locations. And that would include both parking controls and actual taxi areas. I have, on Copenhagen Street, discussed this with some of the new local residents who are immediately overhanging the probable location for this. And I would like some reassurance of the process, the detailed process of consultation which will take place, and what time will they start to be able to make comments, and who will receive those comments and how we'll go through that. A specific request from a couple of them were, can we prevent taxis from sitting there with vehicles idling at night time to reduce fumes, and what controls can we bring in that way? I would also comment, although it's not a taxi issue, but it's one mentioned by the chair in the past, that there is a request during the day for disabled parking spaces on that street, and I can see that potentially, depending on how the TROs, which would allow the taxi rank, are implemented, that might allow that to happen. So those are my 2 comments.
I'll try and answer the first question. So when it comes to the procedure for taxi ranks, it's a two-stage process. Highways, very important. They are the ones who will carry out a full consultation in that area to look to change the TRO, which is the traffic regulation order. Once that has been approved, then it will come back to this committee for approval, for the go-ahead, for then the council to consult on, again, you could call it a TRO, which is a taxi rank order. And so there will be 2 opportunities for residents to raise concerns, should they have any, should this proceed in that location. And again, those concerns will be brought back to this committee for consideration before any action is taken in actually putting a rank in place, so actually approving that taxi rank. The other question, what's the other question?
Well,
Sorry.
just to quiz you on that then. So the decision we're being asked to do today, which is agree in principle this locations, we aren't planning to do any consultation formally around that decision.
So yeah, so this report is just seeking members' permission to progress the work up to a point of consulting with County Council, with the police, and undertaking some public consultation. But all that information, before a final decision is made, will be brought back to this committee for a final decision.
And when will residents get a chance to make an input then? Be clear about that.
So the public consultation includes residents. We haven't got a date at the moment, but as soon as we've worked that up, we can share that with committee members.
Will that be at the time that the TROs are considered? And then separately at the time that a taxi order is proposed?
It's all part of the same process, yeah.
So 2 opportunities. Yeah. Thank you.
Lots of other formal consultations with statutory bodies as well during that process. Do you want to come back with the other issues?
I think the second one was relating to parking, wasn't it?
Yes. And the issue about idling.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So engine idling, as you know, it was included in the penalty point scheme. So whilst it's an offence in itself, it's also included in the penalty point scheme. So officers are in a position to issue penalty points to any vehicles persistently idling on taxi ranks or anywhere in the city centre. So it's there, it's available, and should it be an issue, then it will be addressed.
And sorry, and then I'll shut up and let the other members come in. Do we know how many and exactly where on Copenhagen Street we're thinking about?
Sorry, yeah, the finer detail hasn't been agreed yet, so it's really just the proposal to really start the discussion with Highways, because without their approval, it isn't going anywhere. So let's start the discussion with them and then see where we go from there.
Say shut up now. You're welcome to come back any time. Hannah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope this is okay. I know you want to stick to the point, but I think it covers it. Please interrupt me if you think it doesn't. I was wondering about the air quality management area, which is covered by this committee as well as other committees. And I note that Butts is one of the worst places. So I welcome this moving away from the Butts. But I wondered if there were any implications thought about in terms of the air quality management plan and air quality for Copenhagen Street and Lowesmoor, and what the implications of those might be. Thank you.
I think that's a Lloyd question, is it?
Yeah. At this stage, no, we haven't considered the environmental impact on those 2 locations. But of course, as part of Worcestershire Regulatory Services, we issue or monitor the air quality on behalf of the City Council. So of course, they will be a consultee. They will put forward their view. Should we get approval from Highways to actually start the work on consulting on these locations, then that will be part of the work, full consultation. And again, their findings will be brought back to this committee for consideration. That's correct, isn't it, Lloyd?
Yeah, all I was going to say, Chair, was that I think as part of the air quality action plan, supporting, promoting, increasing public transport obviously has an overall benefit. I think the point Councillor makes is probably more a localised issue around not so much air quality but nuisance and those sorts of things. But as Niall said, our EHOs will be a statutory consultee as part of the process.
And it's also worth pointing out there are certain times of the day when vehicles will not be able to use Lowesmore, and that will still remain the same. And it won't change as a consequence of being a taxi rank there. Okay. Jabba?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think welcome the report in terms of obviously being able to look at new spaces. I mean, the key thing here is paragraph 2.3, in which we currently have issued 240 Hackney carriage licences, and we've only got 84 full-time or part-time taxi rank spaces. All the members and all the city know the issues that we have around overranking and the lack of parking space. So there's an absolute need for parking for Hackney carriage taxi rank space in the city centre at the right location. So the question here is the spaces that we're removing probably equal to probably 10 spaces. So are we replacing them with 10 spaces? So that's the obvious question. If it's replacing them with 2 spaces, then what's the point? You know, in terms of that, if there's an absolute need, you need to replace them for like or near enough like for like, so we're meeting the need. So that's it for the first question. The wider question around air quality and idling. We know Copenhagen Street is a key delivery point for a lot of the businesses here as well. We have refrigerated lorries, articulated lorries, parking day in, day out, lots of vans coming in, idling as well, yet we have no enforcement of those vans, yet we have a policy enforcing, specifically targeting taxi drivers when they're idling. So there's a little bit of disparity in between who we enforce and who we don't, because there's an air quality zone, and obviously in Lowesmore, an issue which I've highlighted previously in the press, and in and around Copenhagen Street with the huge amount of delivery vehicles, especially since now the passageway is being made pedestrianised, quite rightly so, in terms of the businesses to flourish there and the high street to kind of flourish. So we just need to be careful in terms of a fairer approach in terms of obviously enforcement, to making sure that we get enforcement consistently, regardless whoever's flouting the law, rather than a specific targeted one. So in terms of that, so there's 2 points there in terms of the amount of space being lost. Will it be replaced by that? Obviously, you've evidenced there's an absolute need, and members have previously, historically, in terms of overranking, have highlighted that as well. Thank you.
Just before I ask officers to respond, I think it's worth saying that the ones which we're talking about removing, taxi ranks which we're removing, aren't currently used at all. And the taxi trade have indicated to us that there is no interest in them continuing to use those. And they have identified these 2 locations, and they appear to be happy with those suggestions. But obviously that will be out for wider consultation. So we're potentially getting more parking taxi rank spaces because of the consequence of them not using the ones which they currently have.
Agreed, Chair, but I'd like to come back on that. When Quinn Street was initially introduced, it was in the wrong place in the wrong time. I don't know who did the consultation of that. We just seemed to have some free space available and thought that was a really good idea to put a taxi rank there, knowing full well that it wasn't going to probably be used and opposed, but I'll let you come back.
Well, all I'll say is we're under a different regime these days, and there's now consultation with people before those decisions are made. Hence why we've talked to the taxi industry at some length before we got to the stage. Niall, do you want to come in and answer anything else?
No, Chair, I think you covered it. Yeah, it's a valid argument if it was a rank that was actually being used. So we were realistically losing 10 spaces for vehicles. But in my time, certainly within licensing, I'm not aware that any vehicles have used it. And we've had numerous discussions at taxi forums about its use. And even to the point where I think there was works taking place in the city centre. We put in a temporary rank and encouraged people to use Green Street. The drivers still didn't use it because they felt that there's no custom there. So it's a very good point, but we're not actually losing taxi spaces because they're not being used. I think if it was a very busy rank, then it would be a totally different conversation. With regards to the enforcement of the vehicles, it falls outside of the remit of this, certainly licensing, so unfortunately I can't answer. Thank you, Chair.
And I think that's the committee responsibility for other traffic regulation orders. I think comes under the Environment Committee, does it?
Yes, Chair.
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't think you'd see me. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just very happy with the Lowesmore one because I've seen the taxis down there, sort of a lot of them collecting people and a lot of them collecting takeaways, so they'll just be loitering there and in the way. So I'm really pleased with that. But the Copenhagen Street one, I have concerns because the taxi rank is proposed to be on this side, the Guildhall side, is it, or the other side? No decision. But I would like to see it restricted so that there's no risk of a taxi that's turning in suddenly realising it hasn't got room on the rank and being too close to the traffic lights, or absolutely no tolerance at all for any overranking at that rank. There can't be. And also a lot of people do use it to drop off and pick up. There's already a lot of fly parking, so from people who think they can park there and use it as a private car park. So would all this sort of things be taken into consideration, along with idling and maybe electric taxis at that rank, if we can do such a thing, if we can enforce that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, highways will be key. They will lead on this. They will tell us how many rank spaces are suitable, if at all, in that location. They will tell us which side of the road it will go on, and then they will consult so that everybody has their say. With regards to the electric side of the taxi ranks, it's for further investigation. I'm not aware that there are electric-only taxi ranks in the country, but I can certainly have a look and do that sort of benchmarking with other local authorities. And it will be part of this work. You know, if that's the case and that's what we want, then we can make it happen.
But just to be clear on that, Chair, that at the moment I'm not aware of any electric taxis on the Worcester fleet. Perhaps one.
I think there's one.
Yeah. Okay. So unless there's an uptick in our drivers looking to go electric, then we would sort of struggle to make the case. But yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Subcheck and then Councillor Riaz again.
Yeah. Well, I was going to raise electric taxis as well. But on that, I wonder if we can be a bit more ambitious and progressive. And even if there aren't any others in the country, whether that's something we could actually start consulting on at an early stage. Because if local residents are concerned at fumes and noise, that is a mitigating effort that could be implemented. It would encourage the take-up of electric taxis in advance of 2030. And just another question, is do they require planning permission?
No, it's just the Highways Authority.
I hear what you're saying and what others have said about electric taxis. I think it's fair to say that's been accepted as a potential thing which we need to investigate further, and I've got no objection to that because I think it is a very good idea, and it would also encourage more taxi owners to transfer to another electric vehicle. So I'm keen to see that expanded further, but we need to look at it to see, one, whether it's legal, and two, whether we can actually physically do that or not. I've got two other people who've indicated, Councillor Riaz and then Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had that electric debate, and when you passed the policy in your committee last year in terms of that, and at length in terms of the take-up, and hence why this committee decided a hybrid approach was the best approach to do there in terms of trying to reach full electric in one go wasn't feasible and not cost-effective, with considering the cost of an electric vehicle. And then if you have a modified electric taxi, then you're looking probably in the region of 45,000 at a plus in terms of that. So that's just way out of the reach for anyone in this city in terms of trying to do that. So we've had that debate. Therefore, a hybrid model, absolutely, which you've kind of proposed in your committee. So let's not, if we go down the route of a fully electric one, what's going to be the take-up? That's the simple reality of it in that location. The other point I wanted to make is obviously since the loss of the Gifford, the old Gifford layout, the people haven't got in this city a place to come and drop off easily, and hence the increase in usage of Copenhagen Street. And that's a reality for this whole city. They use it because it's convenient, it's close enough to the high street. Yeah. Close enough to the high street to safely drop up and kind of pick up. So I just wanted to put that in.
I hear what you're saying, but this is not a transportation committee. But I hear what you're saying, and I got a lot of sympathy with what you're saying. And I stress that again, it's something which we need to explore, the issue of electric taxes, whether it's hybrid or otherwise. Let's have an answer to that discussion, whether we can actually do something or not. I think that's worthy for us to have a discussion at a later stage once we have the information. Final speaker, Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to have something in your radar. Because I attend Worcester Cathedral on a Sunday, I've become very much aware there's a lot of people who are quite elderly who try to access the city centre during the weekend. And because of the works that are being carried out at Worcester Cathedral, parking is not possible in the front of the cathedral, which means that they have to use other car parks. And there is a limited availability for blue badge holders to access the city centre. So, for example, the Copenhagen Street car park, it's available, but actually the incline...
Sorry, Councillor Jagger, I'm going to have to interrupt you.
Sorry.
I do apologise because I don't like doing so, but we can only really discuss taxi ranks at this stage. We can't discuss other traffic regulation orders or issues. It's not relevant to this committee, and it would be outside our remit. Sorry.
Okay. No
But
worries.
carry on if you want something else.
No, I just wanted to say, keep in mind that Copenhagen Street could be a good place for blue badge holders as you're making decisions about taxi rank.
Thank you, and I don't disagree. You have the recommendation in front of you. All those in favour, please show. We are unanimous again. Thank you very much. I've lost my papers. Review of taxi forum, Niall. Do you want to say anything at this point?
Not really, Chair, unless you think it's appropriate for me to do so. The report is fairly self-explanatory. It sort of details the work that's taken place. It's got attached a draft terms of reference for the meeting. The meeting, we hope, will continue to be a good source for the council to speak to those people that they license, so that we're getting the best value out of any decisions that are made or being put forward to committee. So the information's there, Chair, if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say I have asked people whose opinion I trust, taxi drivers who are members of this council, and they have all indicated support for this proposal as a way forward. So I think this is a good move for us. It will narrow the debate down to what we need to talk about, and it will restrict access to prevent other people participating who have not got a role, which has been a problem potentially in the past. Any questions? I thought there would be. Councillor Scott, then Councillor...
Any suggestions of taxi users being represented on the forum?
No, there isn't.
The forum is decidedly for our work in consultation with the taxi industry and trade. I think it's fair to say that taxi consumers have got 35 councillors which they can come to and ask their views and opinions about the taxi industry. And they've got the members of this committee who are there on their behalf as well. We're the consumers. And so I hear what you're saying, but it's not that for that purpose. It's for our discussions with taxi users, with taxi owners and drivers. Yeah, I don't disagree, but there you go. Councillor Subcheck.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in it says about 50% of members attending the meeting, otherwise it can't go ahead. And then there's a list on page 20 of what constitutes the membership without actually numbers of, for example, taking the last bullet point, the trade union representative. So is that going to be a barrier for the meetings going ahead, this 50%? It sounds like it's very deliberate, so that there's more inclusion. Am I right in reading it that way?
Not necessarily. I mean, as I say, this is a draft, so there's still scope for amendments. Now, what we tend to experience in the past, and I think I've been there, where the members of the forum constituted myself, the police, highways, town centre, and nobody from the taxi trade. So it seems quite difficult. The meeting went ahead anyway. Sorry, I'm the chair, I'm the vice chair. And whilst the meeting went ahead and we discussed a number of factors, you know, when considering that, should it have gone ahead? You know, should there have been members of the trade there? So we can reword it. You know, it's not meant to be a barrier and stop the meeting going ahead just because it's not there, but it's to make it a useful meeting, to ensure that there's proper dialogue with people that we license, because that's really what the taxi forum is. It's for the license holders. So if they're not attending, should the meeting go ahead? Don't know. You know, it's open for discussion, really.
I think it may be worth saying 50% of those in the taxi trade rather than the membership. So, yeah, good point. Any other questions, comments? I put the proposition to you. All those in favour? And any against? Thank you very much. And we come to the final item today, taxi rank enforcement update, Operation Rome. This is an information item, is it not?
That's correct, Chair. It's really a follow-on from the report that was presented in December in relation to the impact of the deregulation. Now, we were asked to put that forward again. It was members of the taxi trade who are feeling certainly the effects of different taxi companies coming into Worcester and operating in the area. It's really app-based types of businesses. Now, at that time, we were monitoring. So we've been monitoring since the middle of last year complaints that are coming into the council in relation to taxi matters, mainly from members of the public, the licence holders themselves, and the information that's being forwarded around possible non-compliance. And this is vehicles working on taxi ranks that maybe shouldn't be there, possible applying for hire in certain areas. And we're lucky because we have an intel unit that assesses the level of the information that's being passed forward to us. And again, I forgot to mention councillors themselves reporting non-compliance from taxi licence holders themselves in relation to over-ranking. And it was really just looking at all of this information to see, what have we got? Who is it? What is it? You know, are there persistent offenders? Is it just a case that all of these individual incidents being reported are different people? And therefore, it's just one reported incident. So that is really collating all of that information in a format that can be assessed by somebody who's trained to do so. And that's what's happened. They've come out. Now, the outcome of this is officers get more clarity around who the offenders are and what's happening in the city centre. Now, out of this, we've found that, yeah, there are a number of offenders, and we've managed to identify who they are. And we've been in touch with the local authority, their licensing authorities. So Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Dudley, Solihull, these sort of local authorities that tend to license particular vehicles working for particular operators. And they have taken action. They've interviewed drivers and they have issued warnings themselves. And that has been passed on. Likewise, the information being received in relation to our own drivers and the ones that we licensed, again, it's been assessed and it's been put forward for formal action. I very recently have had to defend a case in the magistrates' courts where an individual had breached the terms of his licence quite a number of times. This committee, the licensing subcommittee, took the decision to suspend his licence. He appealed, and off we went to the magistrates' courts. And even there, they were looking at the quality of information that was being considered when we were issuing penalty point notices. And, you know, there were lots of questions around it. And that's why we look at this and we analyse the information that we've got. So rather than just going off, running around the town centre, chasing after vehicles, it's getting that information and seeing what the actual problems are and being able to deal with them. And that's what this operation is about. And it's being extended. It's been found very useful. And it's being extended to other areas. And certainly in Worcester, we're extending it for a longer period because it helps inform where we should be targeting our resources. That's probably all I have to say at this stage, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
I've got three people who've indicated to speak, Karen, Jill and Jabra in that order. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased we're doing this. I've received informal complaints myself from taxi drivers and from the police who are complaining about out-of-town non-licensed drivers getting under sort of fly parking in the Arboretum in particular. So I'm pleased that we've got some firm evidence that we are acting to protect our licensed drivers and reduce the risk to the public, you know, particularly high-risk groups. So I'm very much looking forward to as a response and an action and what comes from this and how we can improve things. And it certainly convinces me, as I always am, that you used a licensed taxi driver licence who was checked by people and held to account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this, I've been on quite a few of the subcommittees actually, so I think I've seen some of the stats in reality of the repeat offenders and that sort of thing. So how public is the information going to be made? Not necessarily naming people, unless that's appropriate, but in sheer volume, you know, just to let the public know how things are being checked, and also the other taxi drivers, if they realise that so many people have been in front of committee and the results of that, they might desist from misbehaving.
That is always a good question. It's something that we'll certainly have a discussion with our council liaison, because certainly the subcommittees themselves, I don't think the outcomes are publicised. I mean, you wouldn't publish names anyway, but certainly the outcome of those committees and the actions that have been taken, and likewise any prosecutions or penalty points that have been issued. You know, where do you go with it? How public do you make that information? It's always a difficult one, but it's a conversation that we can take away from this meeting and maybe have elsewhere. I know of other authorities that publicise all of that information. It's on their website, how many committees they've had, what the outcomes were, but in a format that's sort of snappy, and you know, it's the information that you want, not having to trawl through papers to find it. But certainly a discussion to take away and have.
Thank you, Niall. You know how vociferous I've been about taxi rank enforcement and illegal hiring, and you know, the likes of Uber coming in and applying for hire, waiting for that. So this is really, really good news in terms of that. Thank obviously the City Council enforcement team as well for upping their game. This gives us a sense of confidence that actually we're going around the right path. We are identifying key persistent offenders, we are enforcing, and we are, you know, holding them to account in terms of that. So really appreciate that. So if we can, you know, carry on in that same vein, we still have a problem with the, you know, hundreds of Uber drivers coming in Worcester, operating according to law legally, but obviously we know many hang around in the city within the boundary waiting for fares at the appropriate time, which is what we're trying to stop, to give our drivers that we license here, who are considerably paying 3 times, 4 times as much for their license fee as some of the neighbouring authorities in terms of that. So we want a parity, so we don't have control over the quality of vehicles coming in. We don't have control over whether they've had, you know, the proper due diligence done to the standards that we have here at WRS. That's the thing that we are really, really after in terms of that. So if you can carry on enforcing that, then that'll be greatly, really appreciated. Thank you, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered how often WRS are coming out and enforcing. Thank you.
I think I've just logged off, have I? No, I'm still there. Yes, now what this does, it informs when we should be going out and where we should be going. It's a good point that Councillor Riaz made there about the types of offending. So are the complaints that we're receiving about applying for hire, which is, you know, picking up illegal bookings, is it about overranking? Now, officers try and get out at least on a 2-monthly basis, certainly an evening in visits in and around the city centre, which are fine in themselves, but picking the right night, picking the right time is always difficult. And again, you have to think about your officer safety. You know, if officers are wandering around at 4 in the morning, who is there to look after them? Should there be a problem? But they are generally out twice monthly. Every 2 months, not twice monthly. Every 2 months.
You also have to remember that they're not the only enforcement people out there. Our own civil enforcement officers have got some powers over traffic regulation orders, and as do the police over obstruction and things like that. I think it's worth saying that this report clearly indicates there's been 85 incidents and 140 vehicles involved with them. And we are dealing with those errant drivers who do cause disruption and do cause problems. And we are continuing to watch to make sure that they abide by the rules. And those who don't will come before us, and we'll take whatever decisions we need to ensure that they do. Councillor Riaz, you missed something. You wanted to come back?
Yeah, just the question of why the operation was called Operation Rome.
It's a nice place.
I don't think there is a relevance. You can't have it relevant. When you put operations together, there must be something, just a name that's picked. Yeah, generated. What I think WRS tend to do is pick European cities, and yeah, we had Op Lisbon, which was our dog breeding, and now it's Operation Rome.
Any further questions? Perhaps they shouldn't be named after councillors in future. Operation Riaz, can you imagine? Okay. Any other questions from anybody? There being not, this is for information only, so can I ask you to note the report? Thank you very much. It's now just gone 5 to 8. That's the conclusion of the meeting today. I've had no other business brought to my attention in advance, so have a safe journey home.